All right, sports fans, we're here for another weekly comics chat. Hold on, I'm trying to pull up my Instagram. Here we go. Another weekly comics chat. And do we have a corker today? So, for those of you that aren't regulars, or those of you that this is your first time seeing me, I come on once a week, Friday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, and I talk about whatever has caught my attention in comic book world for the week. I don't cover and review everything because number one, there's too much stuff to cover, and I have other things I do. I'm a writer, and I have to have time to write. So trying to cover everything is just not feasible for me. So instead, I just do a weekly chat where I talk about what caught my attention for the week. And so that's what this live stream is about. Like I said, if you've never seen me before, it's your first time tuning in. So, what we're going to talk about today on the Today Tip is this right here. We're going to talk about Sadie Sink and MCU deaths. Sadie Sink and MCU deaths is what we're talking about today. So I'm going to talk about them in reverse order from that. We're going to talk about the deaths first. We're going to look at a couple of articles, a couple of tweets, a couple of Instagram posts, because especially the Sadie Sink stuff, that's really been the buzz this week. So I've got a lot to say about that. So if you're here in the comments, give me, there's my famous magic appearing clock. If you're here in the comments, give me a shout out so I know you're here. And then definitely put your comments in the chat because, at the end, I always put your comments on the screen and we talk about those too because I love to hear what you guys have to say. I'm on social media because social media is basically the Comic Con that never ends. There's a chance for you to talk to your friends and, fellow geeks and fellow people that love the sci-fi fantasy comic world like you do. So that's why I do what I do. I know that there are a million trolls and it seems like they don't get tired, but whatever. That's not why I'm here. I'm not out here trying to troll anybody. I'm out here trying to have some good conversations with the people that love this story world like I do. So I'm always glad to see you. You want to have good conversation, you're always welcome on my channel. And I put the comments up at the end because I definitely want to talk about what you have to say. So let's jump right in. I'm going to share the screen so we can talk about the first article. Sure that's showing up for you. Okay. So I'm actually on superherohype.com. And I've liked this website for a long time. So they tend to obviously be focused on the superhero stuff and for the most part accurate. But anyway, first thing we're going to talk about is the stuff that's supposed to happen in terms of character deaths in Avengers Doomsday. Now, right off rip, we already know that plenty of people are going to die in Avengers Doomsday. And why are they going to die? Number one, because Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars is going to be a reset. If you're not familiar with what's actually going on, Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars is going to be the Flashpoint paradox or the Flashpoint timeline or the Flashpoint story for the MCU. It's going to be a vehicle that is used to alter timelines, create new timelines, and ultimately merge everything into one Earth. But it's going to be a new Earth. It's not going to be the Ultimates universe that we met the heroes on. It's not going to be the main universe in the comics. Okay, I see Iraq and Jason. Good to see both of you. Don't forget to give me your comments. So it's going to be something new because the MCU has always been its own thing. So what emerges from this is going to be, again, its own thing. But they're going to reboot and they're going to recast and they're going to start over with a whole new crop of actors. For the most part, I really hope they don't make the mistake of bringing in some actors from the MCU into the new reboot, because that will just mess with continuity too badly. So, which is another reason that them introducing the Fantastic Four so late in the game is just so lame, because they're going to have to recast them anyway. Those actors couldn't play those characters for 10 more years, except maybe Joseph Quinn, maybe. But anyway, let's look at this article. The rumored deaths in Marvel Studios' Avengers Doomsday have just been slashed, with a trusted scooper debunking the previously claimed fates of two major characters while confirming another. Marvel fans have come to expect character deaths in the Avengers movies. Phil Coulson died in the first movie, 2012's Marvel's The Avengers, while Quicksilver could not run some bullets in 2015's Age of Ultron, which I still call chicken scratch on that. Of all the ways for Quicksilver to die, not dodging bullets is how they killed. That was so lame. That was so lame. And Quicksilver shouldn't have died at all. But it's Joss Whedon, so he's not happy unless he killing somebody at the end of his content, whatever. 2018's Infinity War upped the death toll by wiping away half of humanity, while Iron Man made the heroic sacrifice in 2019's Endgame. So far, so good. It's true that we've come to expect death in these movies, which is a shame, because I've always maintained that what makes character death more impactful is when it's rare. So it shouldn't become an expected part of the scenery. We should get something closer to a happy ending or maybe even a neutral ending. But once you establish a pattern of killing a character in every film and it becomes an expectation, then that lessens the shock and the impact and the weight of it, since you already know somebody's going to buy it. And you also know, once you introduce the multiverse, that they're coming back. If the original doesn't come back, you know that a variant is. So, I mean, how many times have we watched Professor X die now? We're going to watch him die again. And Patrick Stewart said this is his last film role. I never believe actors when they say that, just like I don't believe recording artists when they say this is their farewell tour. Then they say, no, this is the farewell tour. And then this is the fare thee well tour. And I don't believe it. Because don't nobody want to sit down. Don't nobody want to stop doing what they love. So Patrick Stewart said that. So we'll see. But we can almost guarantee we're going to have to watch Professor X die one more time. And why? Why we got to watch him die again, and Magneto too. Why? But anyway, be that as it may. Rumors have been flying lately about who might die in Doomsday, which will see the Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four team up to stop Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom. Now, once again, I just want to echo this point here because we've talked about it a lot and other fans have said it too, but what a wasted opportunity to actually give us Dr. Doom. Who should be Dr. Doom? Let me make my face big for this one. We know who Dr. Doom should be, Mads Mikkelsen. Mads Mikkelsen was born to play Victor Von Doom, ruler of Latveria. So them bringing back Downey is just a Hail Mary to try to get eyes on the project, but yet another wasted opportunity. We have never gotten a proper Dr. Doom, not in the unreleased Corman movie, not in the Alba Evans movies, Fantastic Four and Rise of the Silver Surfer, definitely not in Fantastic. If you've watched that garbage, that steaming pile, you wouldn't even know. See, the litmus test of whether or not a character is done right is, would you know it was them if somebody didn't tell you that? Would you know it was them if somebody didn't name the character for you, would you have known in Fantastic? Would you have known that was Doctor Doom, but did nobody tell you that? See, that's always the test. Okay. So we have never gotten a proper Doctor Doom, and this was a chance to give us a real one. But instead, they're going to throw up this Hail Mary by bringing Downey Jr. back just to get eyes on it. And then they might even retcon Iron Man to say that Iron Man was always Doom, and he forgot who he was. And if they do that, that's going to completely retroactively wreck the entire MCU. But whatever, they're just determined to do this foolishness. Okay. Earlier this week, My Time to Shine Hello claimed that both Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine would perish at the start of Doomsday. However, nothing could be further from the truth, according to Scooper James Mack in a new post on X. Addressing My Time to Shine Hello Scoop, which a lot of people think My Time to Shine Hello is Grace Randolph. Did you know that? Just throwing that out there. I'm not saying it is because I don't know. I'm saying that's the word on these internet streets. My Time to Shine is just a sock account for Grace Randolph. Mack wrote that some rumors out there are just meant to divert real information and stir up discussion about the movie. Well, duh. What do rumors do? What do trailers do? What does industry gossip do? It creates buzz. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to get people talking so they'll want to watch the movie. So, yeah. What else is supposed to happen? I'm just asking a question. So he said that before stating that Spider-Man and Wolverine do not die in Avengers Doomsday. Some rumors out there are just meant to divert real information and stir up discussion about the movie, basic stuff, right, as opposed to what? Do you want information that's leaked to turn people away from your movie? Because if you want that, we got prime example for you. We got Rachel Zegler for you. If you want the promo before the movie to absolutely turn people off to the film, just put her out there. She's the master. These two characters do not die in Avengers Doomsday. Now, I'm just going to say straight out, I ain't going to believe it till I see it. How many times have we heard somebody say, I'm not in the film, I'm not in the film, I'm not in the film? Oop, there they are. This is not going to happen, this is not going to happen. Oops, there they are. I remember when Sarah Wayne Callies, am I saying her last name right? Sarah Wayne Callies from The Walking Dead kept saying, Laurie's not going to die, Laurie's not going to die. I'm going to make it, I'm not going to die. Then Laurie died, and then she did an interview after that. She said, I'm an actress, it's my job to act. So I was like, okay, I see you. So just because people are saying this, what they're doing, what they're trying to do, it's working, it's effective because they're here talking about it. But I'm not going to believe it until I see it. The original rumor, if you didn't hear, was that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man dies in the opening scene, and that, I don't know, he's trying to escape his world. His world is collapsing, something like that. His world is collapsing because of the multiverse collapse in general. I don't know if that's because of Steve Rogers' time incursions, that's immediately what's causing the multiverses to collapse, or if it's because of Doom's time traveling. Dr. Doom is actually going from world to world, and his traveling is destroying them, or he's purposely destroying them. So do you remember how Wanda was chasing America Chavez through all the different worlds, and Wanda destroyed everything and everybody in her path, trying to get to her fake kids? So it could be that Doom is trying to find Steve Rogers and destroying everything in his path. But anyway, so they said Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man dies because he's trying to escape his world, and the X-Men are trying to help him, but he doesn't make it or whatever. That was the rumor. So James Mack is saying that don't happen. Who will actually die in Avengers Doomsday? Unfortunately, in a different post, Mack revealed the beloved Marvel character who will reportedly meet his end. The whole Loki situation, you guys should already know it's obvious. If Avengers Secret Wars exists, it's because Doom managed to reach the one who's protecting the timelines, the Scooper explains. Yeah, okay. Once again, I'm not going to believe it till I see it on the screen. You know why? They were working on The Rise of Skywalker until literally the day before it was released. It is not unheard of for them to be retooling and reshooting, reworking, re-editing, and doing post-production in a film up until literally the last minute. So this is end of February. This movie is going to drop in December. So just because this is what people are saying now, and it should be obvious and all that, that doesn't mean anything. Y'all remember back when they did 0 Hour? And where Monarch had showed up and Monarch had changed the timeline and nobody could beat Monarch. And everybody's trying to figure out who Monarch was. And it was one of the big mysteries of comics, and it was awesome. Everybody figured out ahead of time that it was Captain Atom. So they changed it at the last minute and turned Monarch and Hank Hall into Hawk. So both in the comics and in the movies, they pulled a last minute bait switch. So if he's trying to say that this is obvious with the whole Loki thing, that that's who dies, I ain't gonna believe it till I see it. It's possible, but I'm not gonna believe it till I see it. Loki, who became the new overseer of the Marvel Cinematic Universe multiverse at the end of his Disney Plus series, will reportedly be killed alongside the rest of the Time Variance Authority by Dr. Doom. Now, this is another one I call chicken scratch on because you had to have watched the series. Kevin Feige said that things got to a point in the MCU where you had to do too much homework. And I just saw a tweet this week where they listed all the things you need to watch before you watch Doomsday. And I'm like, ain't this just more homework? How is this not homework? You know what I'm saying? And so if you didn't watch the Loki series, you have no idea what that's talking about. Loki becoming the new overseer of the MCU multiverse. You have no idea what that is if you didn't watch the series. And you know what that means for this movie? That means that the impact of Loki does die, the impact and the subtleties and the nuances and the connectivity of that death is going to be lost. Everybody's not going to get it because everybody didn't watch his series. So that has actually been one of the flaws of the MCU for going on so long, is not requiring you to have watched all these shows. And I didn't watch all the shows, and I made a point of not watching them because I don't want to see them. I knew I didn't want to see them. I knew that most of the shows that were using characters from the movies were going to ruin the movie. That's why I didn't watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I knew it was going to ruin Captain America when I knew it was. So if true, it would be the latest in a long line of deaths for the Marvel character who previously faked his death in Thor: The Dark World before being killed off for good in the opening moments of Avengers: Infinity War. The Loki that is set to appear in Doomsday is a 2012 variant, already with the variants, that escaped S.H.I.E.L.D. custody when the Avengers went back in time in Endgame to retrieve the Tesseract. You remember that? Remember that scene where Loki actually got away? So we're dealing with a variant and not the Loki that died in the main timeline. So we're already dealing with a variant. So once you start doing that over and over again, it lessens the impact of everything. All Avengers Doomsday deaths will be revealed when the superhero crossover movie arrives in theaters on December 18th, 2026. Until then, fans should take all rumors with a grain of salt. My thoughts exactly. My sentiments exactly. It's just buzz, it's just hype, it's just whoever running their mouth this week trying to go viral, trying to get some clicks and views. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that per se. I'm saying don't mistake it for something that it's not. So my take on this is still unchanged in terms of how I feel this movie is going to go. My take on it is still, I haven't seen anything yet, to change my take. And my take has been this movie has too many characters, which means it's going to be convoluted. You can't give that many characters adequate screen time, even if you have an extended runtime. So even if this movie, as rumored, is pushing into the 3-hour range, that is still not going to be enough time for the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and the X-Men to get the proper time, especially if we're using everybody that we've seen from the previous universes. They're going to get, there might be glorified cameos at best. There have to be some main players. So obviously Doctor Doom is going to be a main player. Obviously Magneto is going to be a main player. You know, we saw that picture of Cyclops, but that doesn't mean he's going to be a main player in the movie. That could just be a flashback scene of the Sentinels destroying him or Doctor Doom destroying his universe, and Scott goes off and dies again. We don't know. But there can only be a handful of major characters. So we know Steve Rogers is going to be a major player. We know that. I don't even believe Reed Richards is going to be a major player in this movie. I really don't, which is a shame. Not that I like Pedro's Reed. I don't mean that. I mean from the comics. You know, Reed should be a major player in this movie, but I don't think he's going to be. And we know Spider-Man, some version of Spider-Man is going to be, whether it's Toby or Andrew or Peter, or excuse me, Tom Holland. We know some version of Spider-Man is going to be, but remember, Holland has said that he's done with Spider-Man after Brand New Day, or if that's actually going to be a trilogy, he said that's it for him. So remember when DC Studios got bought out? Remember when they brought in James Gunn and Safran? And remember when they still had some Snyderverse movies on the slate? But bringing in that new leadership completely negated the impact of Black Adam and Blue Beetle and Shazam 2, Power of the Gods, or whatever, because what difference does it make when we knew there was going to be a reboot? Okay, I'm starting to get that vibe from this too. Okay, so yeah, keep your comments coming on the screen. I'm going to put them up when I get through talking. Okay, now we're going to go to this right here. Oh, Lord have mercy. Spider-Man 4 fans erupt over Sadie Sink's character reveal in reports. Okay. First of all, let me talk about, I made a tweet this week about how some people seem to be freaking out, and I know the article is going to talk about it. Some people seem to be freaking out because they're like, what does Jean Grey have to do with Spider-Man? And there are some panels. They've been in some panels together. Spider-Man has interacted with the X-Men. And, you know, most Marvel characters have crossed over. I think the most common crossovers have been Spider-Man and the Thing and the Fantastic Four have been with the most other characters. And then I'm trying to think of the members of the Avengers that would qualify for. Maybe Iron Man, maybe Cap. But so crossovers are not like this big thing. So I don't agree with the criticism necessarily that Jean Grey doesn't have any place in the Spider-Man movie in an absolute sense. But I do agree that it's just a move to get eyes on the project. The same reason they had Kamala Khan die in Spider-Man's book, because they know that nobody cares about Kamala Khan. They've been trying for years now to make fetch happen with her, and she's not going to happen because nobody cares about her. So they had her die so she could be reborn a mutant. So they had her die in Spider-Man's comic in Peter's arms, and then she was reborn a mutant, and then they shoehorned her into X-Men lore, and, you know, she still hasn't happened. She's not going to happen. They don't seem to understand that. But anyway, so it's not a huge leap for Jean Grey to be in this, but by the same token, it's obvious to us why they're doing it. Okay? Because Spider-Man and Jean Grey have not had a lot of interactions in the comics, so they're doing it to be sure that Sadie Sink gets a good solid launch into the Jean Grey character. Okay, that's why this is happening, and we know that. Okay. A new report about Spider-Man for a Brand New Day has sparked widespread discussion among Marvel fans online. The update centers on Sadie Sink's long-rumored role in the upcoming sequel, with fresh claims shedding light on who she may be playing in the next chapter of the franchise. Sadie Sink's Jean Grey reveal gets exciting reaction. A new report claims that Sadie Sink is playing Jean Grey in Spider-Man 4 Brand New Day. Trusted scooper Cryptic HD Quality stated on X that the Stranger Things actor is Jean Grey in the upcoming Marvel Studios film. Marvel Studios has not officially confirmed the casting. You see, that's it right there. Like I said before, I'm not going to believe it till I see it because there's been no official confirmation. There's been insider scoop and gossip and whatever. There's been no official confirmation from headquarters that she's actually going to be Jean Grey. So we'll see. So he's saying that she's Jean Grey. I don't know if I'll get in trouble playing that, so maybe I better hold off on them videos because these people are fanatical with his copyright strikes, and a brother doesn't need that on his channel. Sink was cast in the film in March 2025 in an undisclosed role. At the time, Deadline reported the prevailing theory is she'll be introduced as X-Men character Jean Grey, echoing early reporting by insider Jeff Snyder in December 2024. Speculation continued for months with names such as Rachel Cole Alvis, Firestar, Spider-Girl, and Shathra circulating online. Now, I think a case could be made for each one of those characters. The problem is, Sadie Sink is a bit of an it girl coming off of Stranger Things. I mean, I think Millie Bobby Brown has been, the biggest it girl, and then Zendaya and Sydney Sweeney have been the biggest it girls for a while. But I think that Sadie Sink is kind of pushing up in that lane. So the question is, would they want to waste her momentum as an emerging it girl on a lesser known character? Because out of all those listed, Firestar would probably be the most well-known from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. But normies aren't going to know who Rachel is. I doubt they know who Mayday Parker is. Shathra, they're not going to know that. We would know that, but they're not going to know that. Number one. Number two, what is the pattern for Marvel? The pattern for Marvel from the beginning has been that every Marvel movie is a commercial for the next one. So Marvel is really thinking that come the reboot, that's starting off with the X-Men is what's going to restore Marvel to greatness or bring back the MCU. And it won't. Maybe 10 years ago it might have, but, it won't. Or 7 years ago at the end of the Endgame, but whatever. They think it will. So I don't see them wasting all of that. I don't see them wasting a Sadie Sink casting and her momentum as an emerging it girl on a lesser character. Now, I could be wrong, but they're at a point, Sony's at a point where Sony has thrown its hands up because for some reason, Sony thought that a bunch of movies in Spider-Man's world without Spider-Man was going to work. So they gave us Venom, they gave us Madam Web, and that would have worked if they'd featured Sydney Sweeney as Julia Carpenter instead of 5 minutes in costume. So, Venom, Madam Web, Craven, Morbius, which is still a joke. Morbius is still literally a joke of a movie. So Sony recently has thrown their hands up because for some reason they didn't understand ahead of time that don't nobody want to watch Spider-Man adjacent movies. So Sony has thrown their hands up. Kevin Feige has thrown his hands up because bringing RDJ back ain't nothing but a Hail Mary. Y'all, please come back. Please watch again because I said it this week. From WandaVision to Wonder Man, They haven't done anything with the MCU TV series except squander all the goodwill they had, except make everybody realize that the MCU ended with Endgame, that the Thanos saga started in 2008 with Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, went all the way through Endgame in 2019, and that's it. Everything after that in phases, is it 5 and 6, 4 and 5 and 5 and 6, everything after that has been my favorite phrase, Feige-funded fan fiction that don't nobody like but him. So they finally got tired. Wonder Man failed, Ironheart failed, Echo failed. So they're throwing their hands up and saying, okay, we got to go back to what works, which is why they're bringing all these characters back for Doomsday. We know that. So when you add all that up, I don't see them wasting Sadie Sink. I see her having to be Jean Grey when you put in all those factors. Just my take. Previous reports described a character believed to be Jean Grey acting antagonistically. One reported scene shows the character using mind control powers to manipulate Department of Damage Control guards into freeing Scorpion from prison. Additional leaks suggested the character turns Bruce Banner back into the Hulk, prompting Alex Perez to question how this is something Jean Grey would do. Following the latest rumor, users shared reactions on X. One user wrote, "I think she would be a great Jean, if only they weren't giving the X-Men costumes similar to these in the reboot." Another user posted, "Peak cast." And see, now my take on that about how if she's manipulating the damage control guards to freeing Scorpion, if she's doing that, and she turns Bruce back into the Hulk, that's how we get Savage Hulk back. And they're saying, is that something that Jean would do? Okay, hear me well on this. The problem with Jean Grey is that now, in most people's minds, she can only be Phoenix. And then there, Dark Phoenix. So Jean Grey as a character basically got forever changed by the Phoenix saga. So I am 99.9% sure that if they introduce Jean Grey, they will be rushing her towards Dark Phoenix. I can almost guarantee that, because that's the only way she's seen now. She's no longer Marvel Girl. We're not going to get any time with her as Marvel Girl, because Jean Grey as a person is demure and quiet and shy and unassuming. And that's why she's a telepath, and she didn't know that all the men around her was in love with her. I'm going way back to X-Men #1, the original X-Men, when they first dropped. Scott loved her, Bobby loved her, Warren loved her, Hank loved her, even Professor X loved her. She's a telepath. And she didn't know that. That cracks me up to this day. Because Jean Grey, in her first earliest incarnations, was the most unassuming telepath of all time. Most telepaths, if they have any skill, can't help but pick up stray thoughts. But Jean couldn't tell that in Professor Xavier's school, every man around her was into her, including Professor X. That's how unassuming she was. Ever since, however, the Dark Phoenix saga, if you go back and look at Jean's characterization, do you remember, is X3, The Last Stand? Do you remember when they flashbacked and they had Professor X and Magneto, younger versions, and they went to Jean's house to talk to her parents? And Jean was maybe 10 years old at the time. And they had Jean be really aggressive and snarky with attitude. And she lifted up all those cars. And Magneto had said to her, you know, we are like you, you're like us. And she lifted all the cars on the street. She said, I doubt that. See, that's not who Jean was. She's been forever changed by the Phoenix storyline. There's just no way around that at this point. So I am 99.9% sure that if Sadie Sink is Jean, they're going to be rushing her into her Phoenix and then Dark Phoenix persona. So we're not actually going to get a chance to see quiet, shy, unassuming, demure Jean. Okay. So I don't want to see those costumes. I don't want to see those Frank Quitely and Grant Morrison costumes because I don't like them. Them X jackets, them biker jackets, and all. That's just me, but that's not my favorite era. I was just talking about that this week. I have no desire to see these costumes. Traditional costumes are fine. I didn't mind the black leather. I understood them because superhero costumes do not translate well into live action. And all the actors have said they're impossible to move in. Like Chris Reeve had like 20 different Superman costumes, one to sit in, one to fly in, one to run in, one to pose in, because it's impossible to move the superhero costumes. And if you notice in Batman 89, if you notice whenever Michael Keaton moved, you could see his face out of sync with his mask. Sometimes his face would be like squirming in the mask. So there's some awkward shots in there. Because when you translate superhero costumes into real life, they're impossible to move in. They really are. They're good for posing. Cosplayers, they're good for posing in. Yeah, you can get some really good shots with a good pose, but actually moving and fighting crime and villains in them is really, really hard in live action. So I didn't mind the black leather, and I certainly wouldn't mind traditional costumes, although at this point, the X-Men have so many different costume changes to choose from. So Jean's costume will probably be some kind of combination of, excuse me, her green and yellow. Those are her signature colors now. I doubt it's going to be the original black and yellow of the very first costumes or the blue and yellow. Jean will probably be some combination of green and yellow, which I don't mind. Her red hair is offset against those colors, and she looks great in it. But I'm not a fan of that look, just throwing that out there. Okay. So this is what I mean. That's what I mean when I say that Sadie Sink is an emerging it girl. So they shouldn't waste that momentum on a lesser known character. A third user stated, Jean Grey knowing Spider-Man's identity before the rest of the world is a wild narrative choice. The dynamic just shifted. We are so back. No, we're not. MCU's not coming back. I think this will be a movie with a lot of eyes on it. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a good movie. But like I said, at least they have the momentum of an emerging it girl in it. And we would prefer that to Zendaya. Because if Peter's old gang doesn't even remember who he is. And I'm going to read about some casting in a minute. But anyway. So Jean Grey knowing she's a telepath. Okay, the dynamic just shifted. I don't know, maybe. I mean, if Jean doesn't tell anybody, what difference does it make? Another added, plus she's playing her young. Guys who are going to be eating for a long time. Now, I can see that one. Again, when they reboot the X-Men, they're going to want to start with younger actors because they're going to want to lock them. Remember when they signed up Chris Evans, he said he signed to a 9-picture deal. And one of the things that made him hesitant about taking the role of Captain America is that he was hesitant about signing that kind of contract. But apparently they persuaded him because he did it. So I'm sure this is going to be the same kind of thing for the rebooted cast of the X-Men. I'm sure they're going to lock these kids in for a 9-picture deal and also trying to get them before they get super, super popular so they don't have to pay them what they had to pay Downey Jr. to bring him back. Him and Scarlett Johansson commands huge amounts of money per picture now. Not so when they first hired him. So I do agree with that second statement that starting Jean off young means we're going to see her in the role for a long time, which I think finally is a good thing because with Famke, we got 3 movies with her, but again, they rushed her. They rushed her into Phoenix, then rushed her into Dark Phoenix. With Sophie Turner, we didn't get enough time with her as Jean at all. So her turning dark really didn't have a lot of emotional impact because, again, We didn't really spend a lot of time with her. We spent more time with Mystique than we did with Jean Grey in those movies. Seriously. So having her turn, that completely dilutes the impact. So I do agree that casting Jean Young, casting all of the X-Men young, is the smart and right move to lock these kids into a multi-picture deal, and so they can play the characters for a long time. And also so they can lock them into lower salaries, which is what they're going to do. But if the movies hit, I bet you they're still going to renegotiate. But anyway. Confirmed details on Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. I don't believe they're confirmed. Her first appearance will be in Spider-Man Brand New Day. The Department of Damage Control, DODC, will be hunting her down. She is confirmed to share screen time with Spider-Man. Jean Grey will know Spider-Man's identity. All of that is cool. I don't have a problem with any of that. I don't have a problem with her showing up in Spider-Man because we met Black Panther in Captain America Civil War. We met Tom Holland, Spider-Man, in Civil War. We met all of the Avengers in the post-credit scenes first before we got to their individual movies and the big movie, bringing the gang together. We met Black Widow in Iron Man 2. So I don't really have a problem with this, and this is not an unprecedented move from Marvel, okay? So I don't have a problem with any of this. So I just don't agree that we're back. No, we're not back. The MCU is not back. Because the fatigue is real, and because, again, if you want billion-dollar movies, you have to have normies. Us comic fans are not enough to put them over the billion-dollar mark. You have to have normies, and normies are just tired of superheroes in general. I'm sorry. So Sink previously addressed joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe, saying, Spider-Man has always been my favorite. I love Spider-Man. I love Tom Spider-Man especially. I have so many Spider-Man secrets I'm sitting on that feel even more secretive. Now, let me say this right here before we go on to the next one. Let me throw this in, a monkey in the wrench, a fly in the ointment. What if Sadie Sink is Mary Jane Watson? Wouldn't that be something? We're all here assuming that she's Jean, and all the stuff I've said and all the stuff I've read, and everybody's going crazy. Jean Grey, Jean Grey, Jean Grey. What if, since Zendaya, MJ, oh, I can't stand her. What if MJ and Ned, I can't stand him, since they don't remember Peter, what if this is the way they're going to introduce Mary Jane Watson into Tom Holland's Spider-Man world, and then they do a total of 3 movies with her? What if she's that? That's going to be a trip if they pull that kind of bait switch on us. People will lose their minds. And I'm not saying she's a bad casting for Mary Jane. I'm saying the momentum is now shifted towards Jean Grey. And I'm saying I'm not going to believe it till I see it, but if she's Mary Jane, wow. But my take on that is at least we'll have a shot to get a proper Mary Jane. At least we'll get a redhead. At least we'll get someone who, you know, can fill the role. Although I hope they don't do the Paul storyline, because I hope they don't do the Mephisto storyline. I hope they don't do One More Day, because don't nobody want to see that. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that. Okay, finally, let's look at this, and then I'm going to put your comments on the screen. Keep your comments coming. I love your comments. Finally, let's look at this. I'm still on superherohype.com, by the way, if you want to look this article up. And that's a great picture of Sadie Sink right there. Sadie Sink's role, Gwen Stacy, actor, and more exposed in Spider-Man 4 rumor roundup. Repeat, rumor. Recent Spider-Man 4 rumors indicate multiple unconfirmed casting and plot developments tied to the upcoming MCU sequel. Several industry scoopers have shared claims regarding new characters, villain lineups, and crossover appearances. Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures have not officially confirmed these details. Because remember, the executives are sitting somewhere in the boardroom with their hands up. They're like, Lord, please help us find something that can work. Please, Jesus. Spider-Man Brand New Day is directed by Destin Daniel Cretton and stars Tom Holland. It's Peter Parker with a U.S. theatrical release set for July 31st. So, summer movie. Film follows the events of Spider-Man No Way Home and is part of Phase 6 of the MCU. Okay. Where they basically negate the first 3 Tom Holland movies and bust Peter back down to he's not Iron Spider boy. He doesn't have that costume. He doesn't have Uncle Ben. He never had Uncle Ben. He doesn't have Aunt May. He has one shirt and a Spider-Man costume, and he's a photographer, and he's struggling. So basically, they did a complete reset of the Peter Parker we met in Civil War and why. Go through all that. But anyway, Spider-Man 4 Roundup Pin said many potential spoilers. Majestic _UCM claims Kiernan Shipka is playing Gwen Stacy. Spider-Man 4. There's been no official confirmation from Marvel Studios or Sony Pictures regarding her involvement. Now, those of y'all that have followed me for a while and those of y'all that follow me on Twitter know that I am a Gwen stan. I love Gwen Stacy, always have. And I'm amazed at the sheer amount of people that hate her. Because every time I bring her up, I always get all this pushback, but I don't care. I'm amazed at the sheer amount of people that hate Gwen. But I love her. I have always loved Gwen Stacy. I've always preferred Peter with Gwen, just like I've always preferred Clark with Lana. I know most people hate that. I know people are like, Clark and Lois and, one true pair and love forever and longest running comic book ship and all that. I get all that. But I like what I like. I've always preferred Clark with Lana. Always. And I've always preferred Peter with Gwen. But what I will say, I don't necessarily know if I mind Kiernan Shipka. She doesn't really give off Gwen vibes to me. But maybe she could pull it off. Maybe she could. I don't know. Because I haven't really followed her work past Mad Men. So I really don't know if she could pull off this character or not. But what I will say is that I'm tired of seeing Gwen die. I don't need that. I posted a tweet this week where I said movies I will never watch again. One of them was The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Because I'm not watching Gwen die again. Why? Watching her get caught and her neck gets snapped and she dies in Peter's arms and it breaks him. And so many people love that. Well, I'm glad you love it. I don't. So I don't need to see that no more. Just me. Shipka is known for roles in Mad Men and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Previous live-action portrayals of Gwen Stacy include Bryce Dallas Howard and Emma Stone. Emma Stone was the best for my money. Bryce wasn't bad, but she didn't really do anything. And she didn't really have anything distinctive about her Gwen. So you could have swapped out what she did with another female character and it would have been the same movie. So Emma Stone is the definitive Gwen live action for me at this point. Don't need to see her die no more. Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. So we talked about that. Punisher versus Hulk technology rumor. Reports suggest Punisher was still Department of Damage Control tech. Technology is described as effective against Hulk. The rumor indicates a potential rampage sequence involving Hulk, Spider-Man, and Punisher. Official plot details have not confirmed the existence of this scene. I mean, that could be cool. What is not going to be cool is if they punk Hulk again. We don't need to see that. I don't need to see Savage Hulk brought back and then he's just beat to a pulp again by Punisher of all people. Like what with a special laser tech gun or whatever. We know Hulk is vulnerable to sonics. I will buy that because that makes sense. That just makes sense. With his mass and his bulk and all that, Hulk is vulnerable to sonic-based weapons. I will buy that. But, I mean, we've never heard him say his tagline that the madder Hulk gets, the stronger he gets. We've never heard him say Hulk is the strongest one there is. If they have any sense, they will do that this time, but I'm not holding my breath. Enforcers, villain lineup. Daniel Richter claims the Enforcers will appear in Brand New Day, Fancy Dan, Frederick Roswell, Montana, and Ox. In Marvel Comics, the Enforcers debuted in The Amazing Spider-Man number 10 in 1964 as criminal operatives opposing Spider-Man. Additional rumors suggest the film may include about 9 villains from Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Okay, that tells me you ain't learned nothing. They ain't learned nothing. Overstuffing a movie with villains. Hollywood seems to love to do that. They seem to love to not just have a hero and their main villain. They seem to have to always have all these other villains going on or whatever. I mean, they just did that with Butt Kick Man. It was Lex Luthor and the Engineer and Ultraman and whoever else, you know. But I mean, so we don't need 9 villains in a Spider-Man movie. Now, if you want to feature the Sinister Six, I can see that, but it should be just them. So, you know, Mysterio, Doc Ock, Electro, Sandman, Kraven, Goblin. If you want to do that, that would actually be off the chain because that would give us a chance to see Spider-Man at his peak. Because you really got to be hitting on all cylinders to fight 6 of your villains at the same time, and they can't beat you. So I wouldn't mind seeing that at all, honestly. But that would have to be Tom Holland's Spidey at his peak. So that would be cool if they just do Sinister Six. But don't throw in as many villains as you can. And also don't be throwing in villains that the normies aren't going to know. We know, we know who they are, but the normies won't know, so why would they care? Kate Bishop and Kamala Khan cameos. Majestic reports cameo appearances by Kate Bishop and Kamala Khan. The characters previously appeared together in the post-credit scene of The Marvels, which hinted at future Young Avengers developments. Their potential involvement in Spider-Man 4 remains speculative. Well, when it comes to this, I think Haley Steinfeld still has a lot of clout. She's also an it girl of sorts right along through here. I think she has a lot of momentum coming off of Sinners. And again, I can't see them wanting to waste the momentum her career has. So, and also with that cameo, I do believe they're setting up Young Avengers. I think that was always the plan, and I think that the failure of Disney Plus show after show after show slowed that momentum. But I think they were always going to bring in Wiccan and Patriot and Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, and Kate Bishop, and is it Cassie? And I'm trying to think who else. But anyway, they're going to bring in all the junior Avengers. I still think that's going to happen. But they know that they have a better chance if they're going to feature a team-based team. They have a better chance of success with the X-Men than they do the Young Avengers, because the Young Avengers is basically the DEI replacements. They're basically the Ironheart. I knew I was forgetting somebody. The Young Avengers are basically the DEI replacements of the main Avengers. So, you know, the biggest mistake they made with Thor is bringing in everybody except Beta Ray Bill. Who doesn't love Beta Ray Bill? Or Beta Ray Bill? I love Beta Ray Bill. Beta or Beta, however you say it. I love that character. That's the only Thor variant I actually like. So, but we already know Young Avengers is going to be DEI replacements, main Avengers. So we know that. That's not going to fly like it once might have. So they know that a young group has to be X-Men. So I still think Young Avengers is coming. I just think it's been backburnered to get the X-Men going. And then later on, they're going to bring back Kate Bishop and Kamala Khan. The problem with that is that the actors are going to be in their 30s. I think Haley Steinfeld's already 30, isn't she? Actors are going to be older if they use the same actors. They're going to be older trying to play teenagers again, which Hollywood has always done. I mean, 95% of the teenagers on TV shows and movies are played by actors in their 30s that are just young looking. So that's not unprecedented. I'm just saying it's a factor. And one of the biggest examples of that is, of course, Millie Bobby Brown. There was always a lot of buzz, and she got really defensive, and understandably so. She got really defensive about people talking about her aging. She was like, I know people want to freeze frame me at a certain point in time, but I was a kid when you met me. So her point was legit, but I mean, people still have those kinds of reactions. So that's my concern. If they use the same actors for Young Avengers, when they do come around, it's going to be after X-Men, and those actors are going to be much older. So timeline placement revealed. An official art book description states, 4 years have gone by since we last caught up with our friendly neighborhood hero. The description adds, Peter Parker is no more, but Spider-Man is at the top of his game, keeping New York City safe. What? Peter Parker is no more, meaning people still don't know him, so he doesn't have any friends? Is that what that means? Because we know we never saw Uncle Ben, and May is dead, and his original cast doesn't remember. Is that what they mean? The synopsis indicates that Spider-Man is operating anonymously following the events of No Way Home. Okay. It also references an unusual trail of crimes and the repercussions of his past, though further narrative details remain undisclosed. I don't know. I have a hard time caring. Because what they tend to do is they will go hard with the story direction and then do something shocking just to subvert expectations. And then they expect us to emotionally invest in the new reality. Smallville made that mistake. They went so hard on Clark and Lana until Lois Lane was Clark's second choice on Smallville. I don't care what anybody says. Clark would have been with Lana if they hadn't done the stupid kryptonite infusion, and he couldn't be with her. Lois Lane was not his first choice on Smallville. They went so hard on Clark and Lana until the end. So when you do that, it creates a momentum. It creates fans of that pairing. It creates a lot of different dynamics. And when you do that, then there's not a payoff or there's a shocking twist, because Joss Whedon, what he loves to do is set people up that shouldn't be together and then kill one of them. He loves that. So, I'm saying all that to say that I don't necessarily have a lot of vested interest in Tom Holland's Spider-Man at this point, because he spent most of his time as Iron Spider-Boy. He spent most of his time with Miles Morales' cast. So that's how I think of him, and I still can't believe that Anjali Rice is Betty Brant, because she's a dead ringer for Gwen. Still can't believe that casting. So what I'm saying is, if you're now trying to sell me the traditional Peter Parker that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko did, I don't care as much. That's just me. I don't care. I don't need to see him go through those adventures. I'm very familiar with those adventures, and I don't need to see Gwen. I don't need to see all that. So I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's just me. Okay. Now I'm going to take your comments. Eric says, watching the characters potentially die again loses its luster. Yes. Why should the fans care? They won't be shocked as it's already happened. Exactly. Those are my thoughts exactly. Why exactly would the fans care, and what would be the impact? Since we've seen, Wanda killed everybody. We've seen Professor X die on screen 3-4 times now. We've seen Scott Summers die. We've seen Jean die. We've seen Logan die. We've seen Storm die. So anyway, I just don't see what kind of impact or momentum those deaths would have. I sincerely hope They don't make Iron Man Doom. It would completely wipe out Stark's movie, storyline, relationships, etc., much like making Rhodey a Skrull. Could not possibly agree more. If they retcon this thing, if they twist this thing to say that the Tony Stark we met in Iron Man 2008 was actually Doom, and he just didn't remember who he was, that changes everything. And I mean literally everything about the MCU is ruined. Now when we go back and watch those movies, we're watching Dr. Doom pretend to be a hero, if that's the case. Can you believe that? But I wouldn't put it past him. Same with Rhodey being a Skrull, because once we found that out, we had to go back. Because the point, see, if you didn't watch Secret Invasion, I, for some strange reason, subjected myself to torture and watched Secret Invasion. I think because I wanted to see Nick Fury again, because I really love Sam Jackson as Nick Fury. And the character in the comics was modeled after him, so of course he's going to crush it. But that TV show was awful. It was awful in every way it could be awful. Well, that's when we find out that Rhodey's been a Skrull all this time. When they find Rhodey in Secret Invasion, I have that review on my channel, by the way, if you want to watch it. When they find Rhodey in Secret Invasion, he's still crippled. So that leads us to believe that when Vision hit him in Civil War, and Tony, I'm flying dead stick, and he hits the ground, and he comes up crippled, that's when he got replaced by a Skrull. If that's the case, then it retroactively changes everything that happened after that. Everything that happened after that is different now if Rhodey's a Skrull. So I agree completely. If they fool around and make that same mistake with Iron Man, making him having been Doom all this time. And remember, another relationship we're not going to get. Now, the biggest shock of all time was when Darth Vader said, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. Luke said, he told me enough. He told me you killed him. Vader says the most iconic line of all time, no, I am your father. At that point, Star Wars went from being about the war in the stars to being about the Skywalkers. I don't have a problem with that, but I know a lot of people do. But whatever, you can enjoy whatever you enjoy. But the first movie was about the broad galactic conflict. The second movie narrowed it down to the Skywalker family, and the third movie was almost exclusively about that, with the reveal that Leia was Luke's twin. See, the movies progressively became about the Skywalkers, and the prequels were about nothing but Anakin. Again, I don't have a problem with that, but I'm saying that's how it happened. Why am I bringing that up? Because that's the same thing that's going to happen here if they do all these retroactive retcons and they change who these characters really were. Because without the relationships as we know them, they don't have the same meaning. If Civil War is no longer Tony against Steve, but Dr. Doom against Steve, can you see that changes the entire story? It's not the same story. So I really hope they don't make that mistake, but I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't. It would be a completely unexpected twist if Rachel Zegler appeared as a Marvel character and then died in Avengers Doomsday, maybe at the hands of an alternative dimension power princess. That would be hilarious, but I don't think they have the creativity to do such a thing. Plus, they wouldn't pay her. Why in the world would they add one more character to an already overstuffed movie? And you know that girl would be rolling her eyes and clicking her teeth talking about her demands. We know that because she's Rachel Zegler. So that would be funny and really meta to give her a really hard movie death. Everybody would cheer to watch her die. But they're not going to do that. It should be 2 movies or a trilogy to help flesh out the characters and plot. Yeah, I've been saying that from the beginning too. Originally, I think it was 2 movies, but I mean, I don't see this being less than a trilogy to really do it justice. So Doomsday and Secret War should be no less than a trilogy, I think. But they're scared to spend all this money. They need a hit. And they don't understand that the money they're going to spend between the production cost and the marketing just for Doomsday alone is going to push them into the $2 billion gross receipts range. It's going to push them into needing to get between 1.5 and $2 billion to break even just to make and market this movie. So I agree. 2 movies or a trilogy to help flesh out the characters. I agree they're going to cram too much into one movie and it's going to be fan service. That's right. Continual fan service and winks, which I don't think there's anything wrong with fan service, but not in lieu of a story, which is pretty much what they're going to do, or else they wouldn't have brought RDJ back. Fan service in lieu of a story is probably what's going to happen. In the comics, Spider-Man has teamed up with major and minor Marvel characters from Angel to Red Sonja in a title literally called Marvel Team Up. So anybody could be in a Spidey film. Yes, same with the Thing. Same with the Thing. Same with Ben Grimm. So yeah, it's not unprecedented at all. And Spider-Man is to Marvel what Batman is to DC. Meaning when they want to introduce a new character or when they want to get eyes on a project, they just add Batman. That never fails. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that when DC gets desperate, when DC has something that's not working, when DC has something that has just crapped out, what do? Every time they add Batman. That's who Spider-Man is in Marvel. So I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a true thing. Yep, if she ends up as Firestar, then old guys like me will want to see Iceman with her. How can you have part of Spider-Man and the Amazing Friends and not have the whole gang? So if they do a throwback to that show, that'll really be something. That'll really be something if they pull a huge switch and she's Firestar. If we got to see Iceman, how can we not? And by the way, I want Jessica Drew Spider-Woman. If we're doing all that, Jessica Drew need to be in that mix. If Sadie Sink is Firestar. I'm just throwing that out there, but that's what I would want to see. Those Grant Morrison costumes weren't good. I didn't like them. I know some people do, but I didn't like them. The leather jacket looked at her. I didn't like them. They're not a biker gang. And, see, once you make the X-Men too cool or thinking that they're too cool, you lose the core of their characterization. The core of their characterization is that they are mutants. They are not welcome in the Homo sapien world. That's the core of the X-Men lore and mythology. So however, whatever take you take on that, that's kind of the root of their existence. And so once you move away from that, which is why I didn't even bother with the Krakoa thing, once you move away from that, then you kind of lose who they are. And they lose their underdog status. The Avengers are the plastics. The Avengers are the pretty people. The Avengers are the Regina George of superheroes. They're the plastic. They're the shiny ones. They're the pretty ones. They're the ones that everybody wants to take a selfie with, except for Hulk. That's the Avengers. The Fantastic Four is a family. They're that family that doesn't always like each other, but they can't get away from each other. They're a family. But the X-Men have always been the outcasts. They've always been the weird kids. They've always been the kids that sit on the fringe of the cafeteria because they can't sit in the middle table with the cool kids. And if you get away from that, you lose the essence of what makes the X-Men unique. They need to take a 2-year break and let things simmer. then come back with the real first-class X-Men and go from there. Build the anticipation, but they won't. They see dollar signs and they'll keep rolling. Agree with all that. The smart thing to do would be to take a break. Smart thing to do would be to do a progression where we start with the original 5. And then we don't only need to do one movie with them, by the way. We don't need a trilogy with the original 5. We just need one movie with them, and that movie ends with them being captured on Krakoa. Xavier doesn't know what to do. He recruits the second team, the all-new X-Men, and we get Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Banshee, Thunderbird, Sunfire. That would be so much money. Are you kidding me? Storm, did I mention Storm? Colossus, all of them. That would be so much money. Are you kidding me? But they don't want to do things that would win. They want to do crazy things and then blame us when they fail. This is what happens when you hire activists instead of writers. This is what happens when you hire people that hate the characters and hate the fans instead of love the characters and love the fans. Because if they did an original 5 X-Men movie, and at the end they get captured on Krakoa, then they do an all-new X-Men reboot in the second film. And that becomes like the Empire Strikes Back of that X-Men trilogy. And we get all those new characters, and then Thunderbird dies. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Okay, that would, but they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it because it's too much like right. It would be too successful, and they have an aversion to success. We all wish that wasn't true, but it is true. And they have proven that over the old saying, once people show you who they are, believe them. Believe them the first time. Same idea, right? Spidey team up. Have another hero's guest star in Spider movies is potentially great, right? And again, Spider-Man has amazing friends. It worked as a cartoon, and people loved it. As long as she's not Gwen Stacy just to kill her, I'm okay with whoever else they have her portray. I'm assuming you're meaning Sadie Sink, and yeah, making her Gwen would be so stupid. But then again, they made Anjali Rice Betty, and she's a dead ringer for Gwen. And they made Zendaya Michelle Jones or whatever because I can't stand her. And I don't nobody want to see her MJ. No. But anyway, it would be as stupid as possible for them to make Sadie Sink into Gwen and then kill her. Unfortunately, we cannot rule out the most stupidest possible ridiculous move because they cast Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. And they kept trying to sell us on the idea that everybody loves him. And nobody believed in Pascal as Reed Richards. Nobody. And then they wimped him out. And then they made him a secondary character. They put Sue up front. And that's not Reed. So they took Marvel's First Family and reduced them to what? What do you call Fantastic Four First Steps? What do you call that group? So I'm saying that I'm bringing that up to say, yeah, it would be the stupidest thing possible to cast Sadie Sink as Gwen and then kill her. I agree. But I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't. How are you going to get Galactus that right? Because Galactus was incredible. And then use female Silver Surfer. Why? What did you accomplish? Just to own the chuds? Just to spite the fans? Just to be subversive? Every time I saw Charlotte Bowles Surfer, I laughed. I couldn't take her seriously. So I wouldn't put nothing past. The more stupid it is, the more chance they have of doing it. I wish that weren't true. If Sadie Sink plays MJ, this would set up a Disney Plus jackpot female Venom series that no one will watch and just waste actors' time and production money. I mean, they made Ironheart. Right, exactly. Jackpot is MJ's Howard version in the comics. Jackpot's her character name. And also, MJ has become the latest Venom. She's the host for the symbiote in the comics. And I don't understand either one of them choices, which means that's exactly what they would do. They would find comics that nobody likes and nobody reads, and they would find characters that were on the comics panels for 2 panels or 2 pages, and then they would mount those characters. Because we still haven't seen Beta Ray Bill. The one character we want to see, still haven't seen him, have we? Gwen loved Peter. MJ seemed to always string Peter along. Maybe that's just me. Not just you. I agree. Remember, MJ was a party girl. MJ was about being on the scene. She was about being seen. She was a model, but she was about being in that scene and that vibe, kind of that LA vibe, except in New York. That was MJ originally. Gwen was more a Betty to MJ's Veronica. So it's not just you. That's the way I saw it too. Random thought, Lou Ferrigno would be cool as future Hulk the Maestro in Avengers Doomsday, but he might have retired from acting. Now, I would love to see Maestro, and that would be extra cool if Lou Ferrigno did him. Again, the only issue with that is another actor and yet an already overstuffed movie, plus what would they have to pay him to do that? That would be cool. Even if they did a one-shot spinoff with that, that would be cool, because Future Imperfect is one of my favorite Hulk storylines. It's incredible. I love it. Exactly. Anyone see the animated movie Next Avengers? Honestly, I'd be more interested in seeing that as an alternative universe movie than the Young Avengers. Possibly, but there's no way they don't do the Young Avengers. There's literally no way, if there's another incarnation of the Avengers, that they don't bring back Kamala Khan and Kate Bishop and Cassie and Ironheart and Patriot and Wiccan and what's his name? Scar. There's no way. Or no, Amadeus Cho. There's no way they don't do that. There's just no way. I'm sorry. And they're going to shove that down our throats like they would everything else. The only thing that has slowed that momentum again is because they know they need a hit, and X-Men is a better chance of that hit. The unusual trail of crimes might be a rash in New York City hot dog thefts. The perpetrators revealed as Peter Parker Spider-Ham. This will turn into a Roger Rabbit Toon human buddy film. Again, Jason, you should write that movie. They're not going to do that, but you should write that, because that would be awesome. Next Avengers animated movie was entertaining. Once Vader said that line, he solidified himself as one of the greatest villains in movie and pop culture history. That's right. So what they keep discovering, I want you to imagine the sheer amount of money, because there's amounts that are reported, but I want you to imagine in real time the sheer amount of money it must have cost them to try and force BB-8 and Ray, and Poe, and Finn, and Rose Tico, and Maz Kanata, and just, I want you to think about the sheer amount of money and effort it took for them to try to do all that and to change all the theme parks and the hotels and the rides, only to discover that don't nobody want to see that. It ain't Star Wars without Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia Organa, Han Solo, Chewbacca, R2, and 3PO, and Yoda, and Obi-Wan. It ain't Star Wars without them. How much money did they spend trying to make that be something else, only to have to bring the characters back? Why am I saying all that? Because Marvel also doesn't understand that about the MCU. The MCU was Iron Man to Endgame, and they should just let that rest for what it is. We literally didn't need not a one of those Disney Plus shows. We didn't need them. They should have taken a break, regrouped, given us proper Fantastic Four and proper X-Men, just giving the universe a chance to breathe after Endgame before they squandered all the goodwill. But these companies are determined to anger people and squander goodwill. So, okay. Just jumping in to say hi. Busy morning. We'll catch you later. Cheers, all best. Good to see you. Thanks for jumping in. I find marketing is going to be one problem, and when fan service is executed poorly, fans will notice when writing is badly done. Could not possibly agree more. Marketing's an issue, but when it's fan service, which it already is, remember that first little thing was us watching seats with the names of the actors on them, which is nothing but member berries and nostalgia bait. Fans will notice when writing is badly done. It's the story. It's the story that matters. I don't want to see Nightcrawler come back if he's not actually Nightcrawler. How many times? And remember, they still don't understand that don't nobody care about Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, and Brie Larson as her don't nobody care about that. I'm sorry. She has never worked in the comics. They have rebooted her over and over and over again as Captain Marvel, and by reboot, I mean #1 issues rebooting her series. Nobody cares about Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. She maxed as Ms. Marvel, as Warbird, and Binary. But they keep trying. Okay, well, you want to keep losing, then keep losing. Superhero blockbusters have been an example of diminishing returns. Yes, that's the exact right phrase. It's sad because of missed future opportunities when they pull back on making superhero films. That's what happens when you have accountants making decisions and not creatives. That's where that comes from. When they just study numbers and trends. That's why they mistook Twitter outrage for ticket sales. Twitter outrage is not translated into ticket sales. I still remember the 90s Spider-Man, the animated series, and his take on the Secret Wars angle, considering that Stan Lee's wife was Madam Web and Stanley got a cameo. So nostalgic. Yes. They might try to do that with CGI or AI now. Now that you bring that up, they might throw that in with the AI versions. I don't see that not happening. When I often mention about modern creators, regardless of format, who are activists and not artists and writers, I wonder at times why even take the job if you're not interested. Now, here's a good point. Now, I've had to make this point several times on Twitter, and I have to make it again here. What I need you to understand is that the reason most people struggle with that is because most people are not full of the kind of hatred and spite that they are. Most people are not raging activists. When you talk about a political spectrum, the sections that get the most attention are the extremes, if you think about it. Centrists in anything don't get a lot of attention. Politically, religiously, athletes. If you just think about it, the sections in anything, but especially a political spectrum, that get the most attention are the extremes. And so what the average person doesn't understand is that activists are extreme people. So they take the job because they want to destroy everything that they hate. And I keep trying to tell people get mad at me every time I say this. And one time there was this big blow up I had with certain people because I said this. But I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. These are the people that didn't get the attention that they wanted in high school. They were laughed at by Regina George and the cool kids. They were made fun of. They've carried that hurt for the rest of their lives. When you put them in power, they do what Alex Kurtzman did in Starfleet Academy. Starfleet Academy is probably the biggest offensive sign, offensive gesture, anything you want to make up. It's probably the biggest, spiting of fans I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I've ever seen anything as full of spite as Starfleet Academy. I mean, literally every decision is designed to destroy everything that Star Trek is about. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? That's because you have someone in charge that got made fun of when they were young, that got told that they didn't fit in with the cool kids, the plastics, the jocks or whatever, told that they couldn't go to the prom. Just see, that kind of hurt when people get hurt like that. And I know people think that I'm being overly dramatic or extreme, and that's not true. When people get that kind of hurt, they carry it for the rest of their life. Then when people like that get in power, they hate the alpha males. They hate them. I said that about Smallville. I knew what Smallville was as soon as I saw it. As soon as I saw who was writing it, I said, oh, okay. That's why they keep humiliating Clark. You have to be a Tom Welling to date somebody like Erica Durance. Could they do that? You'd have to be a Stephen Amell to date someone like Emily Butler Cards. Could they do that? That's why they hate them alpha males. That's why they do that. Every time I say that, people fly into this rage, maybe because it's true, because it's true. I'm trying to answer Pierce's comment here. That is why. These are extreme people who've been carrying hurt and anger since they were very, very young, who feel like life owes them something that they didn't get. So when you put people like that in power, they're going to smash the archetypes of all the kinds of people that they hate just out of sheer spite. I will repeat, I've never seen a more spite-driven piece of content than Starfleet Academy in my days. Because that's what happens when you listen to Curse Men talk, that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. So the answer to your question is why even take the job if you're not interested? Because they're full of hate and anger. Because Regina George made fun of them because they didn't get to sit in the middle of the cafeteria because they weren't the cool kids, because they feel like life owes them something they didn't get. And if you give people like that a hint of power, what are they going to do? They're going to destroy everything they hate. Traditional femininity, alpha males, the family structure, God, king, and country, you name it, they gonna torch it. That's why. When they disrespected Stan Lee and even ruined the Silver Surfer, who's a favorite of the late legend, I was out, didn't watch First Steps. We knew from the trailers. We knew as soon as we saw a female Silver Surfer, we was like, oh. And we knew from the casting, as soon as we saw Pedro Pascal, we was like, oh. We knew it was going to be some mess. We knew that because they do not love these characters and they do not love us. They hate them and they hate us. That's why they do it. Get that concept and that principle, and you'll see it'll make sense to you. Going all the way back to Smallville, as soon as I saw Clark Kent with a kryptonite necklace with a big S on his chest as a scarecrow, on the scarecrow, pole, I knew what that show was going to be. Humiliation of Superman. I knew it. Why? Because they hate him and everything he stands for. That's why. Most people aren't full of that kind of hate and spite, but people like that are. They've been carrying it since junior high school. Not missing much. They got Galactus right. Johnny wasn't bad. The issue is the movie is bland. Reed was off. Sue was neutral. Galactus was perfect. Johnny was bland. Ben was almost reduced to a mascot. Ben didn't have much more presence in that movie than Herbie did. And then She Surfer was hilariously bad. All right. That's it for me today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I know we talked about some stuff today, but I always do. Y'all know I got some hot takes, whether they agreed with or not. They in fuego, they on fire all the time. So thanks for tuning in and watching me live. Please like this video and share it. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm on every Friday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for my weekly comics chat for whatever caught my eye in comic fandom for the week. So I will see you same time next week. We're already into March. DT2 Comics Chat out.